Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode If You Could Hide to Cola podcast. My name's Daniel. This is my brother Clive.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. I was looking through this material, Daniel, the two sections, and they're so different to each other. So it's interesting because we're going to talk about one topic, and then we're going to just talk about a completely different topic today. Which, it still flows quite nicely because they're both really good topics. It's just interesting that each section so far has just flowed into the next.
Well, I think that's the issue, isn't it, with the Doctrine and Covenants? We've talked about this once before on this podcast that, we come off the back of reading the Book of Mormon, and it is a poetic story of perhaps romance and war and, people searching for their salvation and searching for their God. And one father hands it down to another and the record continues. But the Doctrine and Covenants just simply isn't like that. And we're finding that this will happen the whole time, and we're lucky at the moment because we're still in chronological order. We're going to come to section shortly where not only do the two sections that are next to each other don't tie in, but one might be a year before the other one, and so we are going to see that as time goes on. So yeah, such is the life of studying the Doctrine and Covenants, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, I'll kick us off with the quote, if that's good.
Great.
All right, so Tad R. Callistuff, he said, I imagine that if we should see the heavenly barometer that reads the records, the secret thoughts of each person during the sacrament, we would have a pretty good measure of the spirituality of that person. And thought of that, as I was reading, I thought of, the importance of the sacrament and all the stuff that happens in between. Do you remember when we were kids? We were always very, very quiet and then would just get nudged when the sacrament came to us.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I thought, sacrament's the worst because you're always got to stay so quiet. But as you get older, to me, it's the perfect time to think and to, sort of meditate almost. And it's just a great, it's almost like time freezes and this is your opportunity to ponder. So I love it.
Yeah. I when the sacrament's getting passed, I'm usually reading either the episode we're going to record that week, or I'm reading what the Come Follow Me is that week. I guess, yeah, it's a time of just thoughts on your own, and yeah. Okay, thanks for sharing. Tad, his name, isn't it? Tad, T-A-D, Tad R. Callister.
That's right, Tad R.
He was
Callister.
he was a Sunday school president, and he was part of the team that put this Come Follow Me program together in the pre-COVID days. Would you believe it? Okay, so we're looking at two sections today, section 27 and also section 28. Like you said, Clive, they're two different sections. They are received at a similar time to each other, and they do chronologically follow each other. So the first one is section 20. Let me just read a couple of bits and pieces, Clive, and then let's get into it. But it starts off very, very strong. Listen to the voice of Jesus Christ, your Lord, your God, and your Redeemer, whose word is quick and powerful. So we see a little bit of this language right throughout the Doctrine and Covenants, and we'll end up at the end of this year, we'll end up being familiar with terms like this. We hear two-edged sword, quick and powerful is the one for today. So we'll continue to see that right throughout the Doctrine and Covenants, and it's an introduction. It's an introduction from the Lord. Or this is at least an angel saying that this is from the Lord. For behold, I say unto you that it mattereth not what ye shall eat or what ye shall drink when ye partake of the sacrament. If it so be that ye do it with an eye single to my glory, remembering unto the Father my body, which was laid down for you, and my blood, which was shed for the remission of your sins. And then he says, he gives a commandment. So the second verse is an introduction to what this is about, what the angel is talking to Joseph about. And then a commandment comes in verse 3. A commandment I give unto you, that ye shall not purchase wine, neither strong drink of your enemies.
Well, can I ask you, so with many, many things for the church, it's always, either Joseph goes with a question or even modern day prophets, they'll go to the Lord with a question and the Lord will direct. This, if we read the very, very intro to the section, it says that Joseph set out to procure wine for the occasion and he was met by a heavenly messenger and received this revelation. So Joseph didn't actually go to the Lord and say, hey, can I use wine or can I use anything? There was no, what's the instruction? Here's my question. Well, here's the instruction. This is just a heavenly message just appearing. So is there a backstory? What did Joseph ask or did somebody else ask? Do you know?
What's happening here is Joseph is buying wine. He's copying what he's reading out of the Bible, and he's instituting the sacrament. The sacrament's now been happening for several months, and Joseph is under great pressure from the population. There's times where his house is being robbed. There's times where William Smith comes home and Lucy's there, and the house is being robbed, and these people are trying to find Hiram Smith to kill him, and William Smith has to get a club and kind of drive people out of the house. The times are really, really challenging. And so what our understanding is that this wine Joseph is buying from the community. And in buying this wine from the community, the wine can be poisoned. It can be used as something that will infiltrate the Mormons and then potentially do some damage, do great harm to the Mormon population if they can alter the wine. The wine is so special, the symbolism is so special that it would take an angelic visit for them to not drink the wine. So we get this visit to sort of say, don't do this, because it is there's a possibility that this community can use the wine to bring great harm amongst the members.
I guess that's not something Joseph would have asked because he never would have said, hey, I wonder if someone's doing something bad to the wine. I guess it just wouldn't have crossed his mind. It's interesting, though, you talk about they were just doing what was done in the Bible. So the Bible, when it's talking about sacrament, it always just talks about the cup or the drink. And then later on, it references that they used fruit of the vine, which obviously we take as grapes and wine.
Yeah.
But there's many, many religions out there that, same as us, they just think, well, because the Bible doesn't specifically say you have to use wine, especially in Corinthians, it doesn't even mention it at all, but when they're instituting the sacrament to everyone. And so, yeah, it's interesting that there's a lot of religions out there that some use wine, but some use like watered down, like very, very watered down wine, almost that it's just red water. There's other religions that just use water, so it's not just, a unique thing to the Latter-day Saints.
That's really, really interesting. And I guess you're right. We won't know. Was Joseph on his way thinking, oh, there might be a problem with this wine. Where shall I buy it from? I bought it from these people last week and they weren't real happy with me. And then did it happen? Or was this just an infinite wisdom of the Lord to go, send the angel down and tell Joseph to stop in his tracks. There's a bad thing about to happen. And so many religions choose to drink water like us, do they?
And I mean, when I say many, there's a lot, but it's not like the majority of religions. But there is,
Sure.
there is a lot out there. I'd say more than 10.
I think that a use of the word sacrament is different as well. I think Catholics have 10 types of sacrament. Sacrament is just a name for a symbolic ceremony.
That's right. And the Jehovah's Witnesses, only the 144,000 are allowed to have the sacrament. So that's more of a symbolic thing for them just to pass.
How can I find out if I'm one of them?
You'll know.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
So I guess we are, because we know that we're going to be saved.
Right.
So.
Okay. All right. No problem. Would it be more? Maybe you can teach us about that another day. That would be quite interesting to talk about, I think.
Yeah. No worries.
Okay. So there's a couple of things, Clive, that I wanted to point out in this. The angel now goes into a lesson, certainly teaching. So verse 5, behold, this is wisdom in me, wherefore marvel not, for the hour cometh that I will drink of the fruit of the vine with you on the earth, and with Moroni, whom I have sent unto you to reveal the Book of Mormon, containing the fullness of my everlasting gospel, to whom I have committed the keys of the record of the stick of Ephraim. So Joseph continues to be educated here. I always need to stop and take stock of where we're up to, because it's common. So much of what we read about now in the Doctrine and Covenants is common things that we would understand, generally common. If you've been in the church for more than, say, a decade or so, terminology like stick of Ephraim would be somewhat common. But to Joseph and to people who's giving these revelations to, this is just knowledge being dropped all the time. Like, this is so new, and the terminologies that he's learning about he's just educating people all the time and being educated himself. Like, it's a real feast of knowledge that's happening at this point in time in the early church.
Yeah, I agree. And it's yeah, I think we've talked about it before. There's so much stuff that the Lord needs to explain to Joseph, but he's only doing it in the times that Joseph would need it, because if not, it would just be so overwhelming. So yeah, there is so much. And you're right. A lot of the things that we read in the Doctrine and Covenants, we go, well, it's easy to skim over because we go, well, obviously, well, we know all that. We know the rules, the roles of a deacon, and we know how to pass the sacrament. But you're right. For them, it's all this. It's so brand new, and there's specific wording in there that, you can read and read and read, and then you'll finally understand, well, what is that exactly talking about? What's the story? What's the backstory? And that's what's really intriguing about it all.
So Clive goes on to verse 6, and also with Elias, to whom I've committed the keys of bringing to pass the restoration of all things spoken by the mouth of the holy prophets since the world began concerning the last days. So he mentions Elias here. And then in verse 7, and also John, the son of Zacharias, which Zacharias, Elias, visited and gave promise that he should have a son, and his name should be John, and he should be filled with the spirit of Elias. So he's talking about John the Baptist here, and Elias being someone who comes forward, who comes before. And that's certainly the case of John the Baptist. So it's just making things clearer as well. I mean, I don't want to read every single one, but I've got a number of verses highlighted here. I'll skip ahead to 11 and 12, Clive, unless you've got something to bring up before then.
I just want to note that it's interesting that it talks about John the Baptist, because it's very specific in Luke when it's talking about John the Baptist, how he would not drink wine or strong drink. And it's talking about the sacrament, how you can have anything. And so, it's very specific about that in Luke. That,
right. I didn't even make that connection.
This forerunner for Christ, he abstained from any of this, and now it's talking about it in the same section.
Clive, we learn about Elijah as well. We learn about a bunch of things, but the two highly interesting things, and also this is 11 and 12, and also with Michael, or Adam, the father of all, the prince of all, the ancient of days. Like, this commentary, the language that's used here is just fantastic. And also with Peter and James and John, whom I have sent unto you, by whom I have ordained you and conferred you to be apostles and especial witnesses of my name, and bear the keys of your ministry, and the same thing which I have revealed unto them. So now the general populace is being informed that at a point in time, Peter, James, and John have ordained these guys, and it's now written down in a revelation that people can read and understand and learn from and marvel about, of being Peter, James, and John coming down and meeting with Joseph and meeting with Oliver.
Yeah, I mean, we know the importance of Peter, James, and John all throughout history, even before they were born. And now it's talking about, the beginnings, the archangels. We got Michael, Gabriel, and things like that, and Uriel and Raphael and all of them. And yeah, it's talking about these specific.
I feel like you're just dropping names. You're just making names up.
I mean, there's some names I can't pronounce, but
right.
But it's just talking about the importance of Peter, James, and John for all of these men. And we know that Peter, James, and John all throughout history have been such key important roles in the history of the church. And yeah, it's talking about when Christ comes back, but not just Christ, all these other men, these will come back and we'll have the sacrament together, and You know, it's just a really interesting section. Like, it's easy to read over and go, it's about the sacrament, but really you can break each verse up on these and go, well, what does this mean? And what does this mean? And I mean, we could spend an hour just on this whole section, but we won't.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Why put in this verse here about Michael being Adam, or why talk about these people who are Eliases, and what is an Elias, and what does it mean to be a forerunner, and how do you become qualified to be a forerunner? There is so much in these, and same as other scriptures we have, of course, but with the Doctrine and Covenants, you can just pick out a verse, and there's so much deep meaning there. But it's also, there's a warning, right, that you need to not get too wrapped up in trying to get down a rabbit hole of something that perhaps isn't there as well.
Yeah, for sure. Exactly. Well, should we just move on then to section 28?
Okay, well, section 28. So this is a section here. We're going to talk about a guy called Hiram Page. And we're going to, this is not a challenging section, but there's a problem with the organization of the church. And Joseph Smith has revelations. We're up to many revelations now. We're up to, what does it say here? September of 1830. And revelations are coming about, and the church is in different areas. The church is no longer just in Palmyra, where, everyone who knows something about the church can just come forward and say, Joseph, teach me this, or Oliver, what did you hear Joseph say about that? In this case, the church is in many different areas, and revelations are given. And what we have is Oliver Cowdery, who writes to Joseph, and he says, hey, in this revelation, I think there's more of a meaning in this tangent or that tangent. And he gives his own reflections and almost corrects what Joseph believes the revelation to be, or even perhaps wants to review some of the language, and he wants it to be more aligned with the church as he sees it in his head. And it becomes a big problem because Joseph, he writes back to Oliver and says the revelation is the revelation. And then he actually goes up to see Oliver and talks to him. And Oliver has already convinced not convinced, I'd say that in a bad way. This is a new church. Oliver's given his 2 cents, and the Whitmers are saying, that makes sense to me. I agree with what you're saying, Oliver. And so Joseph has now got a problem. He's now has to talk to all of these people, and he has to tell them that actually the revelation is the revelation, and we shouldn't interpret it to go out this way. The Lord says what the Lord says. And it's a problem with the early church because it is growing so rapidly, and there is no material. You can't just send someone the app and say, hey, watch conference or read from the general handbook. Those things don't exist.
What's interesting and difficult together is Hiram Page. Well, let's talk about Hiram Page first.
Sure.
Well, for me, I'm going to talk about Hiram Page first. Hiram Page receives this stone, right? Or he gets this stone, and it shows him truths, as all Satan's lies do. They all have truths in them. And so, yeah, like you said, it was very, very early stage. It's the early church. So for them to say, well, this is true, and this seems like the truth. And even Oliver, when he's understanding things in his own way, like, we have incredible resources. So when I say to you, hey, what do you think this means? We go, well, it could mean this, but let's look it up. And like you said, they didn't have that ability back then. And so, the Satan has these lies, but mixed in with these truths to go, okay, well, look, this makes sense. And I feel the Spirit saying this. So whatever the rest of it is you're saying, I guess makes sense too, because I guess it all works out. And so it's really, really difficult for Joseph to go, well, no, everything you're saying, just ignore. I'm the only one that can receive this revelation. I'm the only one that's the mouthpiece for the church. But it might seem harsh, but it's true. Like, I can't receive revelation for the ward that I'm in. I'm not the bishop. And the bishop can't receive revelation for the stake that he's in because he's not the stake president. Like you said, everything has order. The Lord has said, okay, this person is in charge of this and this person in charge of this. It would just be absolute chaos if everyone just came to church and went, you know what, whatever you figure out, whatever you want to receive the revelation for, let's just do that. You know, God is not a God of confusion. And that's just what it seems to have turned into. And it would just seem to be a bit of a mess. But I mean, that's not the only thing. I'm not going to get into it now. We'll talk about it later. But there's a lot of other stories that people come to Joseph and say, hey, I've received this revelation and an angel spoken to me about this. And Joseph's got to put them back in their place and just go, well, hold on. That's not how the Lord does things.
It is a challenge. I mean, it's probably something that those who are anti-church, anti-Mormons, unless there's a more politically correct new name that I'm not aware of, but you know, these people who use this as a negative against the church. You know, well, Joseph Smith can kind of say whatever he wants because no one else can receive revelation. But it's not logical. It's not logical that I would receive revelation about you or your family or anyone who's listening to or watching our podcast about their family either. It's irrational and illogical for the order to not be this way. It doesn't make sense. And I can see, though, if you're unhappy with the church and you say, well, how can it all roll up to one person, or how can Joseph be the only one? Well, that's a very small way of thinking about it, because your elders quorum president or your Relief Society president can you know, these people, or certainly the elders quorum president is a key holder and can receive revelation like you mentioned.
I just want to read a couple of verses. I know you've got a few to read, but if you don't mind, just verse 6 and verse 7, you know, again, I mean, this is the Lord speaking to Joseph, but Joseph's got to tell the people, hey, the Lord said this. So it's got to be difficult for him as well to go, I'm the only one that can see revelation, and hey, even the Lord said it. But this is what the Lord says, and thou shalt not command him who is at thy head and at the head of the church. So you can't tell him what to do. You don't go to your boss and say, hey, I need you to go, you know, unload this truck for me. Like, no, he's in charge. And then he says, for I have given him the keys of the mysteries and the revelations which are sealed until I shall appoint unto them in his stead. I shall appoint them another in his stead. So he has been given the keys to revelation. Yes, they will be passed on, but not until I have said so. And so Joseph's got to go to them and say, you know, this is the case. And, you know, but the thing is, like, it's also, I guess it's difficult as well. So this was the early church. And I'm sure there was many people that went, hey, what do you think the Celestial Kingdom's like? Oh, well, I think it's probably like this, but, oh, that makes sense. Well, let's start believing that. I don't know. But between, you know, with me and you, when we try and learn some new doctrine, we go, well, this makes sense and this works. And then we look it up and then we go, okay, well, how do we find that? Okay, well, this is my understanding.
What's the reference?
Exactly.
Who said it? Yeah.
So me and you, if we were in the early church, I don't know what we would have done, because we would have gone, I don't know. Let's go find Joseph. We would have just been at his door all the time.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's difficult for people to go, I want to learn more. I want to learn more, when, you know, it's the early church and Joseph's the one that receives all this revelation directly.
We'll just have a look at verse 2 and 3, because there's a job here. Everyone's a part of it. There can only be one person that receives the direct revelation from God, but everyone plays their role. So this is verse 2 and 3. But behold, verily, verily, I say unto thee. So I say unto thee, he's talking to Oliver, thee. No one shall be appointed to receive commandments and revelations in this church, excepting my servant Joseph Smith Jr., for he receiveth them even as Moses. And now there's a small lesson here. And thou shalt be obedient unto the things which I shall give unto him, even as Aaron, to declare fully the commandments and the revelations with power and authority unto the church. So it's Joseph's job. It's on his shoulders to receive the revelation and to let people know what the revelation is. But equally as important as Aaron to Moses, you need to be a witness of this, and you need to be talking to people about this and spreading the gospel, spreading the good news. as opposed to wondering why the revelation is like it is. And perhaps you would have interpreted it in a better way, a different way. No, your job is to get the revelation and believe it, and then be a witness to it. And of course, Oliver would go on to be a missionary of the church, or the first missionaries. Um, it's just an interesting point here that the Lord has so much love for Oliver, and Oliver's a true pioneer of the church, and played such an unbelievably important role, and is now being told, like, you're Aaron to Moses, like, you're incredibly important, and we need you, and we can't have you falling away because of interpreting this or interpreting that.
It's interesting the way that Satan can lie a little bit. There's a story about a woman who comes to Joseph, and she said that she received, or the spirit spoke to her and told her to go to the woods, and you'll see an angel there. So she goes to the woods, and she does indeed see an angel. And the angel says to her, fear God, and your husband has been called on a mission, but he can't go 100 miles past his home, or he
Right.
will die. And so,
Right.
this lady says that to Joseph, and he says, well, I've called your husband to a mission, and he has to travel thousands of miles. So, it's the revelation that she received. It's not like a crazy one. It's not, hey, go out and eat, drink, and be merry because Joseph's wrong. It's something really simple, and it makes you think, well, maybe Satan knows that this guy was going to do something really important, so he didn't want him to go that far. Just little things that you don't think, hey, this must be Satan. You think, okay, well, something bad's going to happen, so he can't travel very far. And it's just these little things that Joseph's got to go, well, I know that makes sense, but I'm the one that received the revelation. I'm the one that called him to a mission. The Lord would reveal it to me if there was any other issues. And there's countless stories like that. And it's just, there's they call Satan the master deceiver, and he's that way for a reason, because there's so many things that he says that seem logical, but we've just got to understand and know that, as it says in here, verse 13, for all things must be done in order and by common consent in the church by the prayer of the faith. So we need to understand that things are done in a specific way, and we can't just go, they're wrong, the eldest quorum president's wrong, the release side president's wrong. It's the Lord has done things specifically in that way, and he's always done it that way, and that's just the way the church is.
Clive, should we have a look? Just as we wrap up here, do you want to have a look at maybe if you read verse 11 and 12, it gives that explanation of Hiram and the stone, and then we're probably close to closing up our episode today.
Okay, yeah, I'll read it. And again, thou shalt take thy brother Hiram Page between him and thee alone, and tell him that the things which he hath written from that stone are not of me, and that Satan deceiveth him. For behold, these things have not been appointed unto him, neither shall anything be appointed unto any of this church, contrary to the church covenants. So, I mean, it's self-explanatory, really. The Lord wouldn't tell Joseph one thing and then go, oh no, I better tell someone else what's actually true.
Okay, well, I don't really have more to add. We did talk about it at the top of this episode that 27 and 28 were very different. Lots of lessons in them. But this is how the Doctrine and Covenants is, and it's so fascinating. And you've got to almost pick your priorities with Doctrine and Covenants. Next week we're looking at section 29, and when you talk about picking your priorities, that's a fantastic section to spend more time in. Where 27 and 28 are a bit strange. They're covering off problems and teaching administrative issues that the church was facing and isn't facing anymore because these brethren or these saints went through these problems way back when. So, like I said, next week is section 29, and we look forward to going through that great section and talking about it into some detail. We hope you're enjoying If You Could Hide to Cola podcast. Catch us on YouTube, subscribe to us there, catch us on Spotify and Apple Podcast and so many other places. Someone asked me the other day, Clive, what platforms are you on? And I think I got to like 4 platforms. I went, Just
All of them.
there's a few. I actually don't know them all. Clive does a good job at that. So we will see you next week, and we hope you're also taking a few of these into your Sunday school classes, and it's giving you a more rounded knowledge as you track the Come Follow Me this year. Thank you, and we will see you next week.